This is track 16, Being Yourself from Now On. Hey, creatives. I'm C. Jordan Blakera, and welcome to the Whispering Worth to the World podcast. I'm a master certified life and artist coach who specializes in working with creatives. This is where I share what I would tell my younger self if I could, what I've learned about the art of being human, about our inherent divine equality, and how it all relates to navigating our creative expression in the world. Hey, creatives. I'm following up on last week's track where I was speaking about blinking back tears. That's the title of the track. And how during a client session, I had cried a tear, wiped the tear from my cheek, and they asked me, was I crying and why was I crying? And I used it to tell about an aspect of myself, a characteristic about myself that I had been embarrassed about and not at peace with about myself for a very long time. And that I had finally come to a point in my life many years ago where I said, I will accept this. This is not a problem. And I used that as an example of how peaceful I was when this interaction happened to show how far I'd come and what it can look like when you accept yourself. Now, there were two other moments in that same session where these two other things came up. And one of these things was not like the other. So let me tell you what happened. So we're talking, and at one point, the client says, I don't know, Jordan, you're pretty meta. And that concept that you're telling me about is pretty meta. And unless you have scientific proof to back it up, basically, I'm not going to give what you're saying any credence. So the interesting thing was that the comment about science, and unless you have a study or something to back this up, I knew in an instant that won't be me. I will not be Googling over this. I will not be providing footnotes and studies with footnotes and research and all of that. I will not be providing that. That is definitely not me. And I thought about it afterwards, and I'm going to get to that actually after I tell you about the meta comment. But the meta one, that one, I could feel inside of me the wobble. I could feel a little bit go out of alignment. And there is a way that I have been meta since I've been about 10 years old, maybe younger. I have been trying to figure out the big picture, how things all work together, how we all fit together, why we're here, where we're going after we've been here. And in addition, there's a way in which I have been hiding that. Who knows? Maybe like in a bar where I got brushback because I didn't want to drink with all the people that I was with who were asking me, why didn't you drink? Maybe I got brushback at some point in my life from people who were saying, that's a little bit too woo-woo. That's a little bit too out there. Come back to reality, Jordan. Who knows? But it left me with a sense that I cannot be fully my meta self and be accepted. So I'll give you another story. I was at a conference maybe 7-8 years ago, and we were invited to break into smaller groups. And so I got into a group with two other women, and over the course of either hours or days or very short order, we had follow up. And so we had small group meetings within a week or two. I know it was so short because when she said what she said to me, and I'll tell you in just a minute, I remember thinking, how did you see that in such short order? So what she said to me was, Jordan, you're so soulful. You speak at such a deep level. You're so soulful. And that is when I was like, how did you see that already so quickly? With the subtext that I'm not even trying to broadcast this. And if you saw that with me speaking about business, what on earth would happen if I actually accepted that about myself and broadcast this soulful meta quality about me at full volume. I mean, it would be hard to deny. It would be hard to not see or not hear if I was speaking it and broadcasting it at full volume. So there is a way that I have been blinking back that aspect of me, at least a percentage of it, not allowing myself to turn the volume knob all the way up to 10 on that. And so this client saw that, and it felt like actually a brushback. So how this is for me is to allow me to reconcile with questions like, is there anything unacceptable about me being meta, about me pulling so far back the lens, not making it microscopic, but pulling way back to the macro? Is there anything wrong with that? Do I think inside of me that there is anything wrong with that? Where or how am I not accepting this part of me? And I think I still have the idea that if I was on a party boat out in the sea and I pulled out my meta nature, they would go find an island, the captain of this party boat or the crowd that was on this party boat, and they would drop the ladder and they would say, get out, and they would leave me on the island. So that is the worst. That is like the worst thing that could happen. One, pretty bad, would be scorn, ridicule, accusations, criticism. That would be bad enough. But in my heart of hearts, the worst thing that could happen is then now you will ostracize me. Now I am voted off the island or left on an island, separated from the group, left alone. That's the worst case scenario, that this true thing about me that's true blue, that cannot be disputed. I cannot not know this about myself. If I let that out, may not be acceptable and may ultimately leave me alone and separated from the tribe. I just heard this week a snippet. I was watching a TV show, and a snippet of the background music was this lyric: I just want to be myself for a day. And the truth of that, I'm like, don't we all just want to be ourselves for a day? Unadulterated. Can I say that better? Unadulterated, unfiltered, volume up to 10. We just want to be ourselves for a day, but not just that. We want to be ourselves from now on. And I think the concerning thing, or the disconcerting thing, is that it is possible that being ourselves for a day or from now on, in some cases, will separate us from certain people and may separate us from certain tribes or certain members of a tribe. And we are wired for connection. So that is almost a direct threat. Being ourselves for a day can be threatening to the nervous system or to the psyche or to the personality self, because we don't want to ultimately be kicked off the party boat and left on an island in the middle of the ocean. So the truth is, I have a dream of being myself from now on. And myself is absolutely meta, absolutely has a meta perspective. And so I think back to the sequoias that I visited in the Mariposa Grove in Yosemite National Park. And the sequoia, which grows tall in the forest, the sequoia has its site. It has its vantage point. The topmost branch, the top of the sequoia tree, has a different vantage point than the ant, than the termite, than the fern that are closer to the forest floor from the tiny sprig of a new fir tree. The sequoia has its own site. It is a characteristic of the sequoia that they grow tall, that they can see the canopy of the trees at the very top, that they can look out and see the horizon line. And they don't apologize for that. That is simply the site that they have. So can I stand with my sequoia site, as it were, and not apologize for the vantage point that I have? And when I come to the conclusion that there is nothing unacceptable about that part of me, then the work becomes, can I stand side by side with myself, aligned and grounded with myself when I think that an aspect of me may separate me from the tribe? So I can either separate myself preemptively and try and hide an aspect of myself, or blink a part of it back, or blink a certain percentage of it back. Or I can say, come what may, I will be the sequoia. I will have the sight that I have, and it will be my work to have my own back and be willing to stand by myself, whether I am kicked off the party boat or not. And it will take reminding myself over and over and over and over again. And my hope is that after that declaration is made, and after I remind myself over and over and over again, that I can be as at peace with that part of myself and exposing and revealing that part of myself to the eyeballs of the humans in the world, to be as accepting of that and as much peace with that as I am with the fact that I don't like alcohol, and that, yes, my eyes well up at random times in interactions with the humans of the earth. Okay, now let's go from meta to science. So you're pretty meta, Jordan, and unless you have science and studies to back that up, I will not give that credence. I will continue on my path. So the cool thing about that moment was that, as I said, I was like, I'm not your girl. I'm not going to be that person. I knew that inside instantly. And it reminded me of something that I have taken so for granted for a long time, because my mother instilled in me, and I think it came specifically from religion and spirituality, and in her seeking and in her meta nature, that she was seeking a way of understanding the world where direct experience was the name of the game. So she was not going to accept things unless she could experience in her direct experience. A perfect example is, so many of us think that the experience of the divine, of God, of Allah, of the infinite, of the eternal, is something that is reserved for a select few, for the mystic, the priest, the minister, the rabbi, the representative of the church, from someone on high who is the conduit and who will be the arbiter of and the explainer of God. And we are not allowed to have a direct experience, and maybe even being told that's not how it works. I will narrate. Me, the conduit, will narrate and will let you know how this whole God thing works, how this whole spirit thing works. And so just from her example in my life, I accepted from a very early age, I like this value. It's a value for me. I want to be able to have direct experience of whatever you're telling me. So I'll give you a coaching example. When I first found coaching as a client, and it was explained to me that when we have thoughts, we feel a certain way, I could directly prove that to myself. When I realized, or when I identified that when I think I'm a loser, I feel inadequate, less than, worthless, ashamed, I could feel that in my own energy field. I could feel the effect that had on me. And then when the coach suggested that thoughts are optional and that we could direct which thoughts we were believing and which ones we were activating, I could prove that in my direct experience too. I could prove, as I moved to, when I have this thought, I'm a loser, I feel shame, I feel inadequate. If it is a thought, then I can change the thought. I can gradually change the thought if I want. I'm open to believing other things about myself. I'm open to thinking other things about this person that I am. When I got on the scale in the morning and I said, that weight makes me unacceptable, I could feel how bad I felt. And I could move myself to that weight is data. If I want a new weight, I can make new choices. Furthermore, there is nothing that can touch, that can put a dent in my inherent worthiness. Worthiness is inherent. It is not based on what I do, what I say, how I appear, how I behave, what you think of me, how much money is in my bank account, etc. I can feel all of that in my direct experience. So while I can be very macro, very meta, the sacred must help me on a Saturday. It must help me on a Sunday. They go hand in hand. They are interwoven. They both inform each other. The meta and the macro must help me on a Monday with the traffic jam that I am in. If I cannot pull down all of this meta lens, everything I see when I go through my meta macro lens, and I cannot utilize it to help me as I navigate traffic or my mom's Alzheimer's or the friendships that I have or the relationships that I have or the business that I'm building or going to the grocery store or the post office, then what good does it do me? So the two of them work very much hand in hand. And I find it delightful when science catches up or when there is a study that proves something that I know in my direct experience or might point me in the direction of, why don't you go see if you can prove this scientific discovery in your direct experience? I'll give you some examples. So I love to drive. I will drive my butt off. I will just drive and drive and go, and I love it, especially in country towns where the space is wide open and I can see the mountains and the mountain ranges and the tops of the trees, et cetera, et cetera. And this same client told me that the eyes, which are part of the brain, that there's a study that says there's something fabulous that happens in the brain. See, I didn't go look up the study. There's something fabulous that happens in the brain when our eyeballs, human eyeballs, look at the horizon line. And inside of me, I went, yes, I get that. That makes sense to me. Oh my goodness, how delightful. Science showing me something that I already knew. Oh, explaining me to myself in a slightly different way. Not necessary for me to go enjoy a drive and for me to be craving a drive and for me to love being out on a drive and for me to, when I come around the curve or a corner and I see the horizon line, I just go, woo, like it must be what's happening. Serotonin, dopamine, something's happening for sure. But all I know is I'm like, yum, that's amazing. Let's do it again next weekend, right? And so it's delightful when science catches up, cool. Or when I hear about a scientific study that quote unquote proves that. But I'll bet you the people out on the old wild west who were in their wagons driving across, moving across the earth, looking at the horizon line, just knew that was pretty cool. I think all the beach people, ocean people, water people who go look at the ocean just know that it feels good, with or without the science to back it up. Another example of direct experience is, for example, I remember thinking, who knows, 10, 15 years ago, because I was introduced to meditation when I was 10 years old, about 10 years old. I remember seeing a report of that science had done a study on meditation and that, oh, lo and behold, meditation was beneficial. They could prove it now. And I thought, good for you, science, for catching up, right? I'm glad the yogis and the mystics and all the people from back in the day who just sat their butts down and meditated and discovered that they felt better, or maybe they gained insight or whatever, however they were served and benefited, knew that meditation was beneficial before science. Sometimes science catches up to what we can already know in our direct experience. And the last thing is, just recently, I discovered a documentary on highly sensitive people. And the woman who discovered this, codified it, her quote at the beginning of the movie is, something like this. I'm paraphrasing. This was a discovery waiting to happen. And in the documentary, she quotes science. Science has now studied and measured that there is a group of people who are considered highly sensitive people, and that now that they have the scientific instruments and they are pointing them at studying this, they can see different parts of the brain being stimulated, activated with the same stimuli. There, certain parts of their brain will activate, whereas if you show the same stimuli to other people, not quote unquote highly sensitive people, you will not get the same stimulation, or you will get it in other parts of the brain. But I thought it was fascinating, the quote, right? This was a discovery waiting, or this was something waiting to be discovered. So what is still waiting to be discovered that we humans don't have the benefit of knowing yet, but that we can prove in our own experience? So direct experience, highly, highly important to me. So for me, more than the specific topics of these aspects and traits of myself that I have accepted or am reconciling and coming to acceptance with, it's more about the art of accepting ourselves and accepting ourselves as is, accepting ourselves as we are. And I came to the point with the tears that I'm peaceful with it. I'm peaceful with alcohol. I am peaceful with the direct experience. And now it's just up in my mind and in my awareness. Oh yeah, that is a facet of me for sure. I have a high value on what I can prove to myself directly. And this meta nature aspect of me, I would like to move into the same category, because there has been a way where that threat to my belonging with my tribe has kept me from being in my full expression and from being myself for a day and from being myself from now on. So as we say, yes, I will be my true self, then it takes the work when it is shown to us where we are out of alignment to walk ourselves through that and accept it, and to say, if I get down to the final hierarchy, what is more important? That I withhold certain parts of myself for the acceptance of others, or I be in my full expression and I learn to accept myself and remind myself to accept myself, and I accept myself as is. And so that is the work I'm doing. And that is the work that I'm doing with my meta nature. I do want to be myself from now on. And that for sure is as true of me as the fact that I don't like alcohol and that my eyes tear up at the most random moments with people. And I have meta nature. And this is my fervent wish for everyone listening, that you are able to be yourself from now on, not just for a day, but from now on. And to the artists that I work with, that you are willing to bring your real voices forward and to let yourselves be more loose in your work if you want to, or more tight in your work if you want to, and to paint whatever concept or subject matter or theme that you truly want to, that would be you in your full expression, being yourself. That is my fervent wish for you. See you next week. Hey creatives, I will have future classes and trainings on the self-worth of the soul, as well as stepping outside of the entire paradigm most of us don't even know we're trapped in, so that we can live and create with more innovation, invention, and infinite choice. Want to know more? Go to www.createanyway.today/soul. SOUL. That's createanyway.today/soul.